Hi there, everyone. It's 4 o'clock in Washington. I'm Michael Steele, in for my friend Nicole Wallace. So we're in the midst of what could be a watershed moment for the Republican Party, with a series of primaries and a conservative grassroots gathering potentially signaling that Donald Trump's transformation of the Republican Party is complete. The ex-president himself is set to speak at the Conservative Political Action Conference tomorrow, an event whose opening headliner was Viktor Orban, the authoritarian leader of Hungary. And today's guests and speakers include Steve Bannon, who was just convicted of contempt of Congress, as well as a conspiracy theorist and My Pillow guy, Mike Lindell. As NBC's First Read put it, quote, "This isn't Ronald Reagan's CPAC or George W. Bush's or Dick Cheney's, or even the CPAC during Donald Trump's presidency. It's taken a new turn." Trump will be speaking after his allies scored a big win in the Arizona GOP primary last night, when Kari Lake was projected to be the winner of the Republican nomination for governor. Lake, who claimed that there was fraud in the primary without proving a shred of evidence, gives Pennsylvania's Doug Mastriano a run for his money in being one of the Republican Party's most extreme 2022 candidates. She's an ex-TV news anchor who regularly attacks the media and claims that Donald Trump is the winner of the 2020 election, which, of course, he isn't. Her win in Arizona means that election deniers will be at the top of the ballot in the midterm elections in at least 4 of the 6 battleground states that determine the winner of the 2020 election. Team Trump now has their sights set on the Wyoming primary on August 16th, where Trump's public enemy number 1, Congresswoman Liz Cheney, is facing primary challenger because of her stance that Donald Trump is a threat to democracy. Liz Cheney spoke to CNN yesterday, reiterating her belief that when it comes to the Justice Department prosecuting Trump for the role in the attack on the Capitol, nothing short of the rule of law in America is at stake. Why?
The question for us is, are we a nation of laws? Are we a country where no one is above the law? And what do the facts and the evidence show? And certainly, I've been very clear. I think he's guilty of the most serious dereliction of duty of any president in our nation's history. You've had a federal judge in California say that it's more likely than not that he and John Eastman committed 2 crimes. So, I think that we're going to continue to follow the facts. I think the Department of Justice will do that. But they have to make decisions about prosecution, understanding what it means if the facts and the evidence are there and they decide not to prosecute. How do we then call ourselves a nation of laws?
Joining us now, Ben Rose, former Deputy National Security Advisor to President Obama, now an MSNBC contributor. Isaac Arnsdorf, Washington Post national political reporter who covers former President Trump and the MAGA political movement. And Michael Singleton is here, a Republican political consultant and host of Screen Share on Peacock. Welcome, gentlemen. So, Isaac, let's start with you. Since you're there at CPAC, what have we seen today? What's happening?
Well, as you mentioned yesterday, things kicked off with Viktor Orban, who delivered what we called in the Post a Trump rally with a Hungarian accent. And really, it was a speech that could have been delivered by any number of Republican candidates on the campaign trail in these midterms, from attacking George Soros to talking about gender issues and migration. And he was welcomed with a standing ovation as a hero and a model.
So talk to us a little bit about what's animating these attendees. What are you hearing? We've seen Mike Lindell and Steve Bannon are at CPAC. Is this idea of election denialism still front and center? That's the thing that's getting people juiced up?
Well, at this point, it's sort of gotten blended over to what they see as the consequences of the election being lost or, in their view, stolen. So, like former President Trump has said, Ukraine wouldn't have happened, inflation wouldn't have happened, all the things that they see going on in the country now that they're unhappy about, they trace back to the election that they viewed as stolen from them.
Sure, Michael. So you've got folks like Bannon, you've got Lindell and a host of other characters there, but you've also got folks like Rick Scott and a couple of governors. This isn't just some fringe gathering of ideologues or Trumpists. This really is the Republican Party? Is this what it is, this sort of blended mix of people?
Well, sure. I mean, thanks for that question, Chairman Steele. I think when you think of the Rick Scotts of the world and whatever conservative sensibilities that those individuals may maintain, they are looking at the political landscape and accepting the reality, which is that you do have to accept, at least even at the cursory level, some components and tenets of this version of Anglo-American conservatism that we see today by virtue of Donald Trump. Now, I am of the belief that even once Donald Trump goes away, that these sentiments will indeed sustain themselves. And so political individuals who are seeking to have some type of political future with influence and dominance in the party are recognizing that they have to show up to CPAC, they have to at least accept some of these positions and get on board, or they will find themselves what we're seeing with Liz Cheney, Kinzinger, mayor, who just recently lost his primary in Michigan. You're seeing that individuals who may be conservative in every regard, particularly when you look at their voting records, but are saying for ethical reasons, moral reasons, that it is easier to destroy this thing that we built, this republic, than it is to build. Therefore, I must take a stand or ruin their political career. And one thing we know about politicians, they care about the number one thing, which is self-preservation. And that's why I think you're seeing individuals like Rick Scott show up.
Which is why, Ben, someone like Liz Cheney stands out so profoundly the way she does. We've just listened to her. She says Trump is guilty of the most serious dereliction of duty of any president in American history. And at the same time, you have candidates, as Sir Michael just said, tripping all over themselves for Trump's endorsement and absorbing this MAGA bloodline and regurgitating it back out with conspiracy theories. What's your take on all of that?
Well, if you look at Viktor Orban, the reason I think he's important, and I actually wrote a whole book about the connection between Orban and the Republican Party, he's the guy who says the quiet part out loud. He's someone who's a blood and soil nationalist and an authoritarian who's spent a decade of redesigning the Hungarian political system from being a democracy, from being a single-party autocracy where he controls the courts, he controls the media, he has corrupt cronies who finance his politics, and he wraps it up in an us versus them nationalist message, us the real Hungarians against them, the liberal elites, the Muslims, the immigrants, George Soros. And the reason I think that's important context here is Donald Trump is someone who's cast aside anything that is recognizable in terms of a small c set of conservative principles within the context of a democracy. And he's made the pursuit of power for its own sake the animating force of obviously his own political identity and everything the Republican Party does. And there's no norm that is going to stand in the way, including the peaceful transfer of power, of Donald Trump trying to do what Viktor Orban's done in Hungary. And I think Liz Cheney sees this danger. She sees that, look, I may agree more with the Republican Party about tax policy than I agree with, Ben Rhodes or certainly Joe Biden. But because she's not willing to accept the pursuit of power at all costs and the kind of cynical embrace of really the darkest strains of far-right politics, a kind of ethno-nationalism. Orban's a guy who said just days before he came to CPAC, he said he was against the mixing of the races in Europe. I mean, this is old-line fascism coming out from behind the veil. If you're someone who challenges that orthodoxy, then you're cast out, as Liz Cheney is. And so we're really in a situation where this is not a competition between just a set of policy prescriptions for the nation. It's a competition between people that includes Liz Cheney as well as the Democratic Party, who believe that we should resolve our differences within a democratic context, within a system of laws and norms, at the foundation of which is that if you get the most votes in an election, you win, and a party that's really willing to junk all that. And sure, a guy like Rick Scott may feel like he has to go along with that to get ahead, but at what price here? And that's why we're in a period of time where these elections are far more existential than determining a set of policies. They're going to determine whether or not we're going to continue on a democratic path as a nation. And that, I think, is what Liz Cheney is speaking to with such urgency, because if Trump can get away with what he did, what message does that send about the resilience of our identity as a nation of laws.